Good day, 1BSEA. Today we will discuss the last part of teaching approaches, which focuses on responding to student and group discussion. Note that these are still under the concept of questioning. First let us discuss the important concepts of how a teacher should respond to student answers. So when we say responding, it has something to do with what does a teacher do after the student answer. The most common response occurring about 50% of the time in most classroom is simple acceptance or saying okay or aha. But there are better reactions depending on whether the student's answer is correct, partially correct, or wrong. If the answer is quick, firm, and correct, simply accept the answer or ask for another question. If the answer is correct but hesitant, give the student feedback about why the answer is correct. For example, that's right, Carmela. The Senate is part of the legislative branch of government because the Senate is blah blah chucho. So, this allows you to explain the material again. So, if the student is unsure, others may be confused as well. And kapag ang sagot naman ng student is partially or completely wrong, but the student has made an honest attempt, you should probe for more information. So, last meeting, gidiscuss ni Mamiliari yung concept ng probing, which is ito yung kapag ang sagot ng student is may part na medyo malabo and may part na correct. And aside from the concept of probing, you can also give clue or simplify the question or you make the question more specific and understandable. And aside from that, you can review the previous steps. For example, yung always na ginagawa ni Mamilyari na kapag hindi natin ma-remember, gina-review na yung steps. For example, ano nga yung steps to handle misbehavior? For example, yung first step is the prevention na dapat clear yung rules, ganon-ganon. And aside from you can review the previous steps, you can reteach the material or a certain portion of the material na hindi naintindihan ng students. And kapag ang sagot naman ng student is wrong and silly or careless, it is better simply to correct the answer and go on. So, simply put, that feedback is information about how the student current performance relates to the learning goal. Hattie and Helen Temperley in the year 2007 reviewed several decades of research on feedback and constructed a model to guide teachers. So this model proposes 3 feedback questions. So these are, where am I going? How am I going? And where to next? The first question or the where am I going is about the goals and goal clarity. So, ito yung kung ano ba yung goal na gusto nating ma-achieve. It is where the teachers identify if nasa tamang direction pa ba siya and giving feedback kung ano ba talaga yung dapat ma-achieve ng isang estudyante. The second question is about progress or the movement toward goals or yung how am I going. And the last question which is the where to next, ito yung the third question, ito yung about moving forward to improve understanding when goals are not met yet or to build on attained goals. So the advantage and the disadvantage and where is it appropriate and inappropriate to use responding will be discussed with my group mates.
So hi everyone, I am Lake Christine Villasis and let's move on to the advantages of responding to students' answers. As you can see, I don't have disadvantages because there are no information about that in the reading material. However, there are inappropriate ways of responding that will be later on reported by Reina T. Dimao. We have here 3 advantages. First is the helps student move towards deep understanding. I'll give you a situation. For example, the teacher made activity wherein the students need to give their opinion. For example, do you agree that the students have different perspectives or understanding? Yes or no? Ngayon, binigyan niya ng enough time para mag-isip yung students and then saka siya tumawag. And then, may nagsagot but that her or his answer is hesitant. So, ngayon, yung guro, para mas ma-move into deep understanding, para malaman na hindi lang nagsagot yung bata ng yes or no, maaari siyang mag-respond in another question. For example, what made you agree in that statement? Or what are your considerations to agree in that statement? So ngayon, yung bata, mapapaisip siya na, ay, oo nga pala, bakit yun yung sagot ko? In that way, hindi mo lang, binigyan mo ng deep understanding yung bata. And hindi lang siya basta sumagot ng yes or no. Now, let's move on to the second one. Response like praises are like appreciation. Just like what Regine said in the previous topic, topic, 'di ba? Andoon yung sa specifics niya steps ng pagko-question. So, pag nag-question ng guro, mag-give ng response. Sa response, pwede siyang i-execute ng evaluation like praises, correcting or expanding. In this naman, response like praises are like appreciation. This is when the teacher appreciate the effort, the persistence, and self-regulation that the student initiated. Yung parang, di ba kasi pag tayo magsagot and then yung teacher is yung impact niya ba, like, parang ma-motivate ka kasi gi-praise ka nung guro. So, the next time na magtanong siya, ready ka makikooperate or you are willing to participate in her discussion. So, yon. Okay, let's move on to the last advantage. It gives the students an opportunity to listen, absorb, and decide. For example, yung sagot ng bata is partially correct or medyo malayo siya sa topic, hindi naman pwede na baliwalain lang natin yun. Ibig sabihin, baka merong rason na hindi niya masyadong naintindihan yung lesson or need pa na ma-expand. So, just like what Regine said from the previous lesson or topic, the teacher must expand the topic. For example, pwede niyang sabihin na pwede siyang magdagdag ng information about that. I-correct niya yung sinabi nung nag-answer. So, in that way, the teacher gave an opportunity to the students to listen to her. Also, they will absorb more information. Yun pala yun, hindi ko siya naintindihan kanina, kaya ngayon inulit ni ma'am. And then also, they will decide on things that are important. Kung need ba nila i-improve or i-improve yung sarili nila, yung individual performance nila.
When you are talking with a student who is participating in the class, it's not just what you think and what the student thinks. It is what the other student in the class is hearing. Now, I will be sharing to you the appropriate and inappropriate response to students' answer. I have listed here at least 3 appropriate response to students' right answers, so this is very understood. First, give praise and rewards at the right time, of course. Then, praise your students after every correct answers. And when student gives a right answer on the first try, without help, give special recognition. Next is appropriate response to wrong answers. First, correct your students' work without being discouraging. An example of this is when you ask convergent question, just say nice try or something like that, or a response that is not directly saying that the student's answer is wrong. Next, always try to get a right answer before going on to the next problem, of course. Then lastly, that I have listed, if the student's answer is incomplete, help the student with the question and the answer. Dito na pumapasok yung na-discuss natin kanina na i-rephrase ang tanong or tulungan siyang i-improve yung answer niya. Now I have here the inappropriate response to wrong answers. First, saying no or that's wrong and making fun of answers. Not only saying no discourages the student but also his or her participation in the class. Next is being a judge rather than being a facilitator. So, as a facilitator, you need to accept all ideas because your goal as a teacher is to encourage the student to share their ideas, not to judge those. And lastly, beating around the bush. Seems to be idiomatic, no? So this means that even though you don't want to embarrass your student, you also don't want to call even more attention to his or her wrong answer. It will be better for everyone involved if you identify where the answer was lacking and either ask if anyone else has a different take or provide the correct answer yourself. We have here Hattie and Timperley's 2007 model of feedback. First is the task feedback, when you say you need to include more about the subject-verb agreement when you give a student a task that is about subject-verb agreement. Next is the process feedback, when you say this page may make more sense if you use the strategies we talked about earlier. And third is the self-regulation feedback. It is a feedback that you say you already know the key features of the opening of an argument. Check to see if whether you have incorporated them into your first paragraph. And lastly, the self-feedback. When you say you are a great student, that is very good. When we talk about feedback or responding to students' answer, we don't only mean saying good job, nice try, that's wrong, or something like that. We are talking about how to correct students' error so that they can learn to the future without destroying their confidence.
Hi guys, let's now proceed to one of the teaching approaches, which is the group discussion. So, the general concept of group discussion is somehow connected with the classroom setting. So, we know that classrooms are the training grounds for students um, that provides opportunities not only to hear diverse viewpoints but also to substantiate their claims with evidence. So in group discussion, they are actually belong to the learner centered category where we can have teacher directed and of course learner directed. So in teacher and student discussion, which is under in the teacher directed, teachers may pose questions, listen to student answers, react, and probe for more information. But see to it, when a teacher reacts, she or he should know the appropriate way of giving reaction to the performance or to the answer of the students. So in learner centered or learner directed, it is also known as student centered dialogue. So, in this category, in this area, students can actually ask questions, answer each other's questions, and of course, respond to each other's answers. So, according to study, only 1.6 minutes per 60-minute class were devoted to this discussion.
Good day, everyone. I am Carmela Plang. At this juncture, we are going to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of group discussions. As the previous reporter have emphasized, group discussions belong to the learner-centered approach in teaching and can either be teacher-directed or learner-directed. In a teacher-directed group discussions, it always starts with a teacher posing a question, then ask the students to formulate their idea to answer that question. However, in a learner-directed approach or through group dialogue, the teacher does not have a dominant role. Students ask the question themselves, then they try to answer that question. All the teacher do is to be an observer and facilitator. There are different ways of incorporating group discussions in a classroom setting. We have think, pair, share activities, brainstorming activities, anticipation guides or voting, and many more. In group discussion, this is the time where the students practice constructivism. There are advantages when conducting a group discussion. During the dialogue and discussions between the students, they are able to construct meaning on their own and develop a complex understanding. This is the time where students show their capacity to understand different perspectives from their group mates. Next, in group discussions, it is important to have direct involvement between your group mates. That is why teachers should be observant of those students who just silently sit during group discussions and try to let them participate. Because involvement and participation can lead to practice of motivation and engagement or social skills. When a student involves herself in the group, she can have a higher chance of developing her motivation to speak out. She can confer conversation between the group and increase engagement. It does not end there. In a group discussion, a student can assume responsibility by taking the chance to lead to the group or take part of different tasks distributed to each member. Next, student can evaluate different ideas by taking the chance to ask clarifications from their groupmates, express their own perspective to counter the idea of the other, and also examine their own ideas after hearing from others. In other words, students influence each other to evaluate their own ideas. Last but not the least, one of the advantages of group discussion is synthesizing viewpoints. After hearing different opinions from different people, a student can combine those ideas and make it a whole. Integrating of different ideas by following personal interest and justify this interest or idea through other opinions and tolerate these differences. Now that we have discussed the advantages of group discussions, let us now move on to the disadvantages. When you become a teacher, keep in mind that in a group discussion, there will be a lot of unpredictable circumstances. You cannot predict what would happen, especially when a group tries to not show it. Example, when your students try to left out one student from their group, or when they ignore each other but still pretend to be working together. These actions will lead to difficulty participating and anxiousness to speak. When a student is ignored, his motivation to speak out will go down, hence developing anxiety to speak. Then, speaking of unpredictability, there are instances that a teacher grouped the students in large numbers, leading to unwieldy groups. Due to its size, students might have difficulties to lead the group, or others might not even try to participate and let their other members do the work. Hence, it will lead to a few students dominating the group discussions. Instead of trying to motivate your student to speak, they can't because the group itself cannot be handled. To sum it up, we have the advantages of group discussions like meaning construction, complex understanding, motivation to speak, engagement, assume responsibility, evaluating ideas, and synthesizing viewpoints. And lastly, the disadvantages of group discussions are difficulties in participating, anxiousness to speak, and few students dominating the discussion. The last part of this report, the appropriate and inappropriate behaviors of students and teachers in a group discussion, will be discussed by Wendell J. Pasha.
Now let's proceed to the appropriate behaviors of the student during the group discussion. The students should ask questions before proceeding to the group discussion for them to have a clear goal. Then during the group discussion, the students shall respond to each other's questions and answers to have a healthy discussion and maintain the communication, also for the learnings to take place. And of course, everyone should work collaboratively for this activity, the group discussion, to effectively work. Now, the inappropriate behaviors of the student during the group discussion are those who don't have initiative to lead the group that creates a poor management of the team. This will lead to a poor communication, unyielding arguments and debates because everyone becomes the leader. Also, during the group discussion, it is inappropriate to go beyond the task because it consumes too much time. Now, for the teacher, the appropriate behaviors, teachers should post the instructions and questions clearly for the students to have a clear goal during the group discussion. Teachers should maintain the environment calm and open to any of the students' concerns. And for the output, teachers should constructively criticize their output, highlight the points that they have done and the ones that need to be developed. And lastly, the inappropriate behaviors of the teachers that should be avoided are teachers should not leave the students hanging with queries and unclear instruction because it will lead them to confusions. Also, it is inappropriate for teachers to humiliate the students while doing the task and leaving some disruptive behaviors to arise. And lastly, teachers should not leave the class during group discussion because it can't guarantee that the students will participate. Remember that teachers don't have a dominant role during the group discussion. It is more on the students. Students pose their questions and answer their own questions.